Okay, go ahead.
Hi guys, good evening. Before we get started, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Julia Gruhl. I am a graduate student here in the Recreation, Sport, and Tourism Department. I also did my undergrad here in RST as well. I spent a lot of my time with our student sections. I actually led that organization for quite a while. I also work now for the Division of Intercollegiate Athletics and Marketing, which has obviously been a really interesting year. So before we do kind of get started, I do want to go ahead and introduce our speaker tonight, Teresa Shane-Kretz. Over the course of 33 years, she has worked as the head women's basketball coach for the University of Illinois, Rutgers University, St. Joseph University, and Lafayette College. She also served as the U.S. Olympic head coach in 1992. She got her start as an athlete playing for the Immaculata Mighty Macs in Pennsylvania and led the team to 3 AIAW national championships between 1972 and 1974. Teresa and her team's successes were made into a movie released in 2011 called The Mighty Macs. She is also a member of the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame. Throughout her coaching career, she has shown a talent for motivational speaking, has given over 1,000 speeches to various groups, from kindergarten classes to Fortune 500 companies. Grentz is owner of the Grentz Elite Coaching, a basketball teaching academy located in Westchester, Pennsylvania. Through the academy, she has run clinics and camps all over the United States. Before we get to Teresa, I would like to go ahead and send things off to Michael Raycraft for a few more words.
Thank you, Julia. I was saying earlier, I have been looking forward to this conversation since I reached out to Teresa late in the summer. I met Teresa in I believe it was in the fall of, was it 1995 when you came to Champaign, I believe?
1995.
1995. And I think this is a big lesson, and I'm speaking out here to I'm speaking to the guys here. I think more so. I think if there's an impact that Teresa makes and made on me, and I think it's a really important lesson here, is she came to town and she taught a 25-year-old traditional male, sports fan that there was more to it than I thought. She taught me how to think big, and she taught me how to, kind of fine tune my goals. And the lesson that as I reflect on it, it made me a better person. It made me a better parent, better teacher, I hope. And if there's an impact that she made, and she's obviously made a huge impact on her athletes and her sport and her profession. But I think she's made a much bigger impact on people all over the country. And so I'm so grateful for her friendship. I'm so grateful that she came with us tonight. Welcome home to the virtual Huff Hall, Coach, or the Huff, as you would say back in the day. It's great to see you, and thank you for being here tonight.
Oh, Mike, you're so generous, so kind. You're going to make me cry. We did. We had a wonderful time. And, oh, there's my Foxy. She's coming in here to say hello tonight. She, when I went to Illinois, it was in 95, and I said, I'm an East Coast person. I didn't have the first clue about Illinois. It was Carol Cars who called me and said, about making a change. And I didn't know. I had no idea about the Fighting Illini. I had seen Lou Henson at times on the NCAA with his teams, but that's all I knew. And even some of my friends from Long Island said, Teresa, what's an Illini? I said, it's like a pasta. I said, no, it's not Illini. It's Illini. And I knew that the program was not in the best of. Hey, Fox, you were good the whole time. But I thought, we can turn this around. We can make a change here. We can do this. And you take a fresh start, look at it. And that's what we wanted to do. And I know a lot of people thought I was nuts for doing that, for leaving the East Coast and packing up everything, taking my sons and my family, and out we went. And I think that it was a matter of changing a culture, getting the kids to believe, getting the fans to believe, getting people to believe in what we were doing and who we were and how we did things. And it was a lot of fun. When I look back, It was great fun. And Mike, you were a major part of that. The assembly hall, we sold it out. We did all kinds of things. We had birthday parties in there. We had Halloween parades. One year I was Glenda the Good Witch leading a parade with a tiara. Oh, it was crazy, but it was fun. It was a lot of fun. And I would say to your class, if there's one thing you take from me tonight, is that dare to dream. Don't put fences around what you think. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to step out and to try it. The worst you can do is fail, and you get another chance to start again. So you're young, you have everything in front of you. Go for it and dare to dream big. That would be my thoughts.
Could you talk a little bit about your early career and what led you to, the kind of the story of Immaculata, what that looked like, what it felt like?
Well, I grew up in Philadelphia, in Delaware County, and a neighborhood of all boys. So I had two choices. I could either learn to do what the boys were doing, or I could stay in the house and help my mother clean. Well, cleaning was not one of my highlights, but she did get a hold of me for that, and we can all clean. But the boys, I learned, Mike, that boys play differently than girls. And with the guys, and they taught me to play baseball, football, and the last thing we learned was basketball. But guys choose teams very differently than girls do. You and somebody else could get in a fist fight, but if you knew that the guy you were fighting with was the best guy for the job, you would choose him on your team. Women, we didn't choose teams like that. We would choose our best friend, who's most popular, who's got the best bag. It was, you really learned the difference between how men and women think with that. And that was a big part of my growing up. And then went to O'Hara, Cardinal O'Hara, played there. We won, and then went out to Immaculata, which was an all girls, all women's college. There were only 500 in there. And we had several players who were from the Philadelphia Catholic League, which was a great incubator of basketball players. And there were a bunch of us together from Philadelphia. And I said, okay, I knew that we could all play. And I said, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to play 4 years and we're not going to lose a game. We played 4 years and we lost 2 games. And to be honest, Mike, I'm still ticked about the 2 that we lost. So, we win, and our first national championship, we play over at Illinois State in Redbird Arena over there in Normal, Illinois, not having a clue what that was about. And we win a national championship. And those championships set the course for what we're going to do. Marianne Stanley is in there, who's now coaching the Indiana Fever. Renee Portland, was at Penn State and who's now passed. Maureen Mooney was a great player in there. Maureen Stallman. I mean, they were great players, and we played well. We played for each other. We wouldn't disappoint each other. And then we went into coaching, and that wasn't the plan either. That was it just happened. I didn't want to be a coach. I majored in biology and chemistry and thought I was going to go into research science with Smith, Klein, and French. But that didn't happen. I ended up coaching at Rutgers as the first full-time women's basketball coach. I was there for 19 years, and then I got a call from Carol Kars and was at Illinois for 12 years. Coached the Olympic team during that time in '92. I had coached various United States teams, and it was a great career. It was just, you kept going and you kept doing things, and you didn't know where the next thing led, but you just did it. And I think of the teams today. They have charter airplanes, meals are there. It's very, very different than when we were doing it back then, but that's all part of it.
How do you feel, how has it changed? I mean, the most, if you're looking at it today versus 1970?
Well, one, I look at that the parents are far more involved than our parents were then. Our parents were supportive, went to the games, but there were other things to do. The idea of us playing basketball was not a high priority. It was with us and the way we did it. But today, with the AAUs and the parents and the full scholarship and to get that paid for, that's a total different field today. And it's hard. And that's why I think you have so many transfers, kids that got the scholarship and then they go to school and they realize, holy moly, this is a lot more work than I thought. And then they transfer and they think that something's better on the other side. And I hate the transfers. I really do, because I think that that's where you have to learn. You have to, in order to succeed, you have to fail. And you'll fail more times than you succeed. But the best part is you just pick yourself back up and you learn and you go on. And that's where you learn about adversity and how to deal with things. And that's what sports is supposed to teach you, how to weather difficult situations later on in your life.
So let's talk about that. So how you talked about about the difference between boys and girls and picking teams in Philadelphia in the 60s. How do you think, how would you describe how a sport impacted women in terms of, let's talk a little more broadly in terms socially.
Well, I'll give you, for instance, when I took the job at Illinois and my salary was in the paper, Ron Gunther had said to me, he got a lot of grief from his guys at the club for paying a woman what he paid me back then. It just, women in sports, we were in the newspaper, probably in the 6th page behind the tire ads. It just wasn't done. I can remember when I was what first year or so I was there, one of the local towns, it might have been Decatur, needed a speaker. So I got sent over there. Well, they were absolutely furious that they had the girls basketball coach as a speaker. Well, after I spoke and did the job, then it was like, oh, wow, she can really speak. And this is like, we want her next year. And, they just didn't know that they didn't know. And when we were there, the fact that, we could sell out the Huff, we could sell out the Assembly Hall. People loved watching that team play. If you weren't at the games, I can remember Doug Mills saying, hey, if you're not at these games, you're not anywhere. You need to be here. It just became a social outing as well. And that took work. And you were a major part of that. When we got involved with corporations, we got involved in the championship packages. We found ways with schools. In the speaking, we went out and we reached out to the communities and to the different towns and got interested, because there were a lot of girls out there who wanted to play, and there were a lot of parents who had daughters who wanted to play. And and the kids and the players I had were great role models, and they loved them. And that made it was a perfect storm that all came together.
One of the commentaries I give in class all the time is women's athletics struggles when marketing people try to market women's athletics like they do men's athletics.
Oh,
and they're different.
Well, the other thing is, and I can remember having this conversation with Kay Yao and Pat Summit, is that on the women's side, excuse me, the marketing person would be a grade entry level job. We'd get some young buck in there to do the job, and they didn't really want it. And we didn't have a lot of women in the marketing. It was men. And what were they going to do? They were going to do it exactly the same way you're selling the men's program. Well, there's no way that was going to work. And it won't work. And we did it a different way. And we appealed to the nature, which goes back to my opening statement about boys pick teams one way, girls pick teams another way. And we catered to that formula, and it was a winning formula. And we won. So it all worked out. But today, I think it's very, very different. They can't get a lot of people to come to some of these games. And it hasn't changed. Well, back in the day, there were pockets in the country where there were certain fans that followed. You had the Tennessees, the Connecticut's. Now you have the Louisvilles, the Connecticut's, Baylor. But not every game is sold out. Not every game are they fighting for those tickets. And the other thing that they're always trying to do is to get the student body to go to the women's games.
Students, let me say that the ones that are watching, if you'd like to put a question on the Q&A, I'd be happy to take a look at it and ask T. The movie, Coach. So there's been a big, the students in the class are required, part of it is they need to watch the Mighty Max on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
About the movie?
The movie was great. I was coaching at Illinois when I got a phone call from Hollywood saying that they were going to do this movie, The Mighty Max. And this had come up before, Mike, that they had made some attempts with this that did not work out. So they said to me, Coach Grants, we would like you to have a cameo in this movie. And I said, well, what are you talking about? And they said, well, we would like you to be either a coach or a referee. And I said, I don't think so. I'm not doing that. And apparently you don't tell Hollywood that. There was a pregnant pause. And then I'm thinking, okay, well, then that's the way it's going to go. And they said, well, what do you want to be? I said, well, if you had done your homework, you would know that my teammates and I, we want to be nuns. So there was another pregnant pause, and they said, we'll get back to you. So a couple of days later, they called back and they said, okay, we have a place in the movie where we are going to cameo your teammates and you, and we were going to put you as nuns. So we said, oh, that's great. So anyway, they called and they said, Coach Grants, we need your size because, for the habit, we have to put you in a habit. And I said, I'll tell you what, you get me a very big habit because I'm going to be a very big nun. Okay. So we do this. But the best part about that movie is, and if your students have seen it, is that when Carla Cugino comes into the church, it's early and there's mass services going on. Carla Cugino doesn't have a seat. So she comes in the side and she goes down, and there's 12 rows of actresses who are dressed as college students. And back in the 70s, everything was plaid. So they're all wearing plaid. And then there are 6 rows of actresses who are dressed as nuns in full habits. And Ellen Burstyn is on the one side because she's playing the role of Mother Superior. So we're in there, and it takes forever, Mike, to do a scene in a movie, the way they do it, and we're in there forever. So finally, the director comes through, and there's a break in the action, whatever, and he said, ladies and gentlemen, in this first row on the right here, in the row of professed sisters, are the original 7 Mighty Macs. And there was a nice little, clap like this type thing. And I swear to you on my father's grave, what happens next is the honest to God's truth. In front, 2 rows in front of us, is absolutely positively drop dead gorgeous actress who turns around to us and says, wow, that is really, really cool. You all went to school together. You all played basketball, and then you all became nuns. Well, we're looking at each other going, really? Okay. All right. Whatever. But we had a good time with that. The movie's the movie. It tells some of the story, and then as with Hollywood, they took certain license to have some other things. It's a good story to feel that you never give up. The little guy can win in this one, and we did. And it's amazing. I do get a lot of calls around March, the end of February and March, of high school coaches in different parts of the country who are trying to motivate their team for the championship and get them fired up, and they'll watch the Mighty Macs and they'll call, and we'll do a conference or a conversation with the kids, and to let them know, dare to dream. That's the biggest thing. There's no limit on what you can do. The only one who puts limits on you is yourself. Go and do it. And if they don't like it, they'll, okay, apologize, move on, and go do it again. Do something else.
If you could add things to film, what would you add?
I would have told the truth.
Okay.
One of the things, Kathy Rush is the coach in there. Now, obviously, we do not have a nun as an assistant coach, and the nun doesn't have a car. That's not going to happen. But Ed Rush is portrayed as the antagonist, really, and that really wasn't how he was. He was very instrumental in us going forward, and some of the things that we did. I wish they had portrayed him a little bit more in a little better light that way.
And she was the first woman inducted into Naismith Hall of Fame. Is that right, Kathy Rush?
No, there's been other ones in Naismith, but
was she the first?
No, she wasn't the first, but she's rightfully deserved to be there and coaching that team and doing what she did. And again, nobody expected us to win. Nobody expected us to do anything. Okay, here's the girls. Go ahead, knock yourself out. Have a basketball. I mean, seriously, our basketballs were so lousy. This is a true story. Our basketballs were so lousy, and we would play the U of Penn, Temple University, Drexel, and they all had great basketballs, and they had emblazoned in the letter their name. Well, we would, and this is bad, but I told this story at the Hall of Fame, is that when we played those folks, we would take one of their school's good basketballs, but we'd always replace it with one of our not so good, crappy basketballs. And then whoever had to do that, we'd send that girl to confession on Friday to make sure that her soul was in good shape.
Well, so many of your teammates went into coaching.
Yes, they did.
I mean, and
we're very successful.
Yes,
good
very,
coaches.
very high profile.
Very
high profile.
coaches, right.
Were you surprised with that?
You know what? It wasn't that I was surprised. When I look back, they were involved. We were at camp. When we go to camp, we would teach. I mean, Tara Vanderveer, Debbie Ryan, we're all at Kathy Rush's camp, and they would teach. And naturally, the next thing is it was just breaking out women's sports, and these were going to be the young coaches that were going to take these teams. And Renee had her run at Penn State. Marianne is still coaching, doing so well. She's the head coach at the Indiana Fever. I certainly had my run. It was just, and then those kids in those programs under each one of us, they all did some things. So it's really a nice coaching tree. It really, but who knew? It wasn't something that we planned. We didn't have that kind of information. We just were like explorers headed out without a map of where we were going here, but we were going.
You said you were the first full-time women's coach in the United States. What was it about Rutgers that made that decision at that time?
Well, I was third choice. Lucille Cavalis was one of the choices. Kathy Rush was one of the choices. They all turned it down. And I took the job. And I remember the AD said, well, we'll pay you between $12,000 and $15,000. So I said, well, pay me $15,000. And they said, we'll pay you $13,500. So my first coaching job was $13,500. And I coached both the varsity and the JV and swept the floor, did everything. It wasn't like you had people helping you do things, and you drove a van back then. And it was great. It was a fun time. It really was. Great things happen.
I have a question in terms of what advice would you give women and women of color hoping to get into the industry?
Take responsibility. Take responsibility. Take jobs. Don't be afraid to get in and to ask questions. For me, and I did it. I went, if I wanted something, I called a coach. I called Pete Carrill at Princeton. I called, oh God, I got to think of his name, Widener, C. Allen Rowe, who I learned the 1-3-1 defense. He called it the 59 trap back then. And, I called, when I wanted something, I would go ask a coach. And for me, it wasn't women, it were men. And to find out so I could understand what it was that I was supposed to know and what I was supposed to teach. And I would tell any young woman today, pick out your mentors, pick out your people that you can go and you trust and you can talk to, and talk to them a lot. And it's good to have mentors. Will you look at this kitten? So that's what I would do. And I would not be afraid to do it. I would go and do it. I would have my work laid out and I would go. If that's what I wanted to do.
Well, I remember vividly, and you touched on this, when you came to Champaign in 1995, kind of the status of where it was in terms of where we were as a university with our women's basketball program. And literally it was at Huff, and it was a non-factor.
It really was.
Could you talk a little bit about the community at that time and the sort of things that you faced? And I mean, were you surprised at that when you came? And
no, I wasn't surprised, but I knew I was from the East Coast, and I figured if I'm going to get this to work, I'm going to have to. You are my little buddy here. I'm going to have to get the people in the Midwest to trust me. That is the big thing. Coming from the East Coast, I figured they're going to have to trust me and what I'm about. And that's why I started with the speaking engagement. And you name it, I spoke to them, whether it was a Rotary or a loyalty club or a booster club or a Fortune 500 company. I mean, I was all over that. They got to know us. But the thing that backed it up were the players. The players were just great. They and they played so hard, and they worked together in such a like they danced together. You are a trip here.
Back in the day, you had a statue of a dog.
Huff, I still do. I have him.
Okay.
I still have Huff. He's in my
He
living
never
room.
bothered you.
No, I have him. I wanted a golden, and Carl was like, no, we're not having any dogs. So I bought this statue of Huff. I think I paid $300 for him. And then I did get a golden. I got Buddy, and then I had Jesse. I just lost Jesse a year ago, another golden that we rescued. But Huff is still in my living room. My grandkids come by him all the time. I put a hat on him for Christmas and the whole bit. Oh yeah, he's still here.
Such a good dog.
He's a great dog.
Well mannered.
Very, very. I still have him.
So in terms of the community, you talked about getting out there, doing a lot of public speaking, and the players, you had a great kind of the players kind of actually, everything kind of gelled very nicely. Did you feel like in terms of the community itself, getting out there, that those first couple of years were tough in terms of getting people to do the buy-in?
You asked me earlier, what advice I would give to a woman today trying to get in, and I would do this for anybody, is that, and I went and looked this up, Mike. This, if you can see this was one of my note cards that I used when I was at Illinois, and I loved the calligraphy and the way it was done in the gold seal and the whole thing with Illinois. I would say to that person who was really serious, every morning I would write 3 notes, and they could try this as an experiment for themselves, to write from now to Thanksgiving. Try it, because it's hard to do, but write 3 notes every morning to somebody who has done something for you, who has helped you. It doesn't matter, and make a list of them and write them. And that communication with that card, I can't tell you how many things that's worked for me. And I did that early on. And I've done that all through my career. Writing, just dropping a note, not an email, not a phone call, but an actual handwritten note to people, thanking them for their time, their advice, their quote. And like I said, it was a card like this. So there wasn't a whole lot you could write on it, but it was enough to make an impression on it. So, and I would do that. And I would, if they know where there's certain people and things, I would definitely tell them to do that. I would try it to Thanksgiving. If you could do it every day, just write 3.
What do you think women's athletics is going to look like in 20 years?
Oh my gosh, I have no idea. You hope that, I hope there's more women coaches. I really do. We've raised the salary bar, and as a result, we've gotten more men in coaching women. So I hope that we will have some more women will come back around in a secular point where there'll be more women coaching and getting involved in doing it.
Great. Are there other questions from the students? Okay.
Are they out there?
Oh, they're out there. They're a shy group. They do this to me all the time. Well, let me see. What do you think? What do you think is it? What is the question that's come up repeatedly is COVID? Okay, what do you think? What do you think the impact is going to be on our campuses and college sports and whatnot from the pandemic? Julia Julia did that nice introduction early on in terms of she's in a particularly tough job. What do you think is going to be the outcome of that?
Well, certainly trying to market during COVID and to bring people in and to deal with the rules that change every single day. Our rules here in Pennsylvania just changed again today. The hard part right now, and I don't think the Big Ten has put out a women's basketball schedule yet. I'm still close with Rutgers, and I know, the Big Ten has a protocol for everything that they want to do and how they want to do their testing and things. The problem is the non-conference schools don't have that same protocol where they're testing all the time. So if you play a non-conference school and there's contamination, and then that leads to the Big Ten school contaminates another Big Ten school. So, staying in the bubble works. It definitely works. But stepping outside of it is a whole nother matter. So that's hard. It just keeps changing. And so we really need a vaccine, and we have to be so very, very careful at this point.
So you have two sons and then three grandchildren.
Right.
Granddaughters?
One. First one.
First one.
And she is
She's lucky.
she's a girl. She's a girl. I told her I'm going to teach her to play golf. She said, "Gee, Ma, I want to make sure that I have lunch at the club." Like, okay, we can do that. We can do that. So, definitely. Her mother's a big Duke fan. So the other day at the basket, she had a Duke shirt on and she was shooting baskets. So we were excited about that. But I think there are opportunities for women, and we just have to take advantage of it and realize that it might not look exactly the way we want it to look, but go with it. Take responsibility for it. Go with it. Make it happen. And that's what happened at Illinois. I mean, nobody planned on that being what it was. Nobody planned on us being able to sell the place out. Nobody planned on it. I mean, we had a TV show that was live that we sold out. I mean, I look back and I think, how dumb was I to do that thing live? But we did. We did a lot of things. And who knew if it was going to fly or not? Some did, some didn't. But we had fun.
But I guess my question is, what advice would you give to, do you give to your granddaughter moving forward?
Well, I would tell Emily, and there's a picture of her on one of our hallways here that my sister and my sister-in-law saw this face and they said, "Oh my God, that's Teresa's face," and she made it. So they said, "Oh, we haven't seen that." So hopefully she's got that personality, fight for what she wants. I mean, I just don't think you should be told, well, you're a woman, so you just stay home and, you can't think or whatever. And that's the way it was. That's hard for me to take now that I'm older. I'm like, wow. And when we're going through all this, you're in a male dominated business. All your decision makers are male. I could not go in the room, bang my shoe on the table and say, "Okay, you guys have to give me everything you're giving football." I would have been shown the door. It's that plain and simple. So I had to learn how to be able to play on the team with the guys and how to work this, how to make this happen, how to be able to get charter flights, how to be able to get 3 sets of uniforms, how to be able to do that, but how to be able to give back too. It couldn't be just a constant taking. There was a compromise, 95% giving and the other 5% was compromise. So working that philosophy to build our program, what we wanted, and have a vision and a plan.
So you're saying it's timing, knowing when to ask, what to ask, and how to ask.
Right. And knowing your audience too. Like I think when the school could see that people were showing up to see us play and the style of ball that we were playing was good. It wasn't turnover city. We had shooters. We had dominant players inside. When they could see that, hey, this was a brand of ball that was entertaining, because that's what it was. I mean, people have X amount of dollars for entertainment, and they're not going to spend it on, chaos. And basketball is chaos in motion, really, when you think about it. And you can't do it the exact same way that the men did it. I mean, everybody goes to the Illini games, the men's games, the football games. And you say, well, why don't you come to the women's games? You have to have another tie, and there has to be another facet that you've worked out. And you and I, we've talked many times about, Chicago above I-80 and Illinois below I-80, and it's two different places.
Question I've got is, are there organizations that have openly reached out to you or maybe your previous schools that are looking to, for guidance in terms of coaching, lifestyle, development, player development, et cetera? Are you engaged at all?
I've had a couple of my coaching colleagues have, and I do that. you go spend a couple days with them, just give them another set of eyes on it. But again, probably one of the biggest things that I've said to them that are in my age group is that you might have to dial it back just a little bit to deal with the kids today, because they can't take it the way we did it. I mean, when I was coming up, who were the great coaches? I mean, Bear Bryant, Penn State's guy, Osborne at Nebraska. They were football coaches, and to me, football coaches were the most organized, because those guys would go out there and take 95, 100 guys, know what's going on, get it all done. And, I picked a lot of their brains. So my coaching style back then would never cut it today. It wouldn't work. I mean, I would be sued. I would be run out of town. I mean, it's just not going to happen. I mean, you can't be sarcastic. You can't tell a kid, hey, look, you're really going to have to work on your game. But you got to find a really nice way to tell them. Otherwise, they're going to say, well, I don't like you anymore, and I'm going to go transfer somewhere else. That part drives me nuts. That part really irritates me, because you spend all this money to recruit them. You bring them in. Then they get their feet wet. Then they transfer out, they sit out another year, they mature a little bit better, and they're constantly paid the same full scholarship. So you're running like a farm system for everybody else. So that part drives me nuts. And I mean, that's just my personal opinion. I don't want anybody to get upset about that.
When we got together in the 90s, there were two professional leagues. There was the two women's leagues that were professional in the United States. There was WNBA, and what was the other one called? It was the
ABA, I think.
Right, and that was, I think, was that where Ashley was? She in which league did she go to?
I don't. She went to the NBA, to the WNBA.
She went to WNBA. The WNBA has become increasingly a lot more relevant, right? In the last, I mean,
it has, and they've really done a nice job of marketing, those games and to their audience, and they've done a good job with that. And you have to give them, take the hats off. But again, I can remember the players a few years back; they were going to strike, and I think if these girls strike, they're going to kill this league, because again, they wanted to get them. It was set up, Mike, differently. The organizations, the WNBA side was set up differently than the men's NBA side, and everything had a cap on it. Salaries were capped. You couldn't just decide to pay somebody a lot of money, things like that. You couldn't do a lot of other sponsorships, so that was different, and that's probably where they've been able to keep that and move that forward. And they've made some strides with it. They've paid their dues, and that's a solid thing. And they did a great job, the ESPN getting the games out this past summer.
WNBA has been very socially active.
Very much so.
Very much so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And and one of our members of the U of I is Sheila Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
And she and her group, and they have been very vocal in terms of talking about not just gender issues, but social issues of our time regularly. Do you think that's going to have an impact on a college game?
Well, I think that sports in our country is living, breathing art. People watch it. People want to see it. Now, obviously, the shutdowns have changed some things, but I definitely feel that they have a platform to voice their opinions, and they can do that. And it gives them a chance to say that there and to be. And I said, go for it, girls. Go for it.
Awesome. Are there any other questions from the students?
Yes, we have two questions. One is in the Q&A box. The other is in the chat box.
Well, if you see him, Guangzhou, go ahead.
Okay, so the first question in the chat box is, how will COVID-19 make an impact on recruiting and coaching?
It's a terrible impact. I think that this summer, they did have some tournaments where coaches, they did it live stream. In other words, exactly the way we're doing this. They had the tournaments played in a convention center or wherever they were, and they live streamed them. They copied them. And then the coaches, the schools had to purchase those streams so they could watch the games at home. And I think that's tough. That's going to the games and watching the kids was one thing. And now being able to do it that way. I mean, I think Julia said earlier when we were talking that, classes online are hard. Imagine recruiting and watching all those kids on line. I think that's very hard. And again, I feel very badly for the seniors last year in high school, the kids going in, and those same kids going to be freshmen, the juniors and seniors. I have two nephews right now that are junior and senior in college. And I really feel badly for them because this is their experience, and it's very expensive to go to college, to sit home or to sit in a dorm and take a class. And, college is about the social part of it. And you're not getting that. And as far as the recruiting thing, I think it's very, very hard. And I think you're going to have to really be creative and inventive to get out there, to get your brand out there and get coaches and to see what you're about.
Thank you. And we have another question. So how do you think women's sports that don't receive much ticket sales or fans or sponsors will survive in a collegiate world, especially at a non-big Division I school with more sports getting cut? And should the WNBA get more involved at the collegiate level?
Great question. Great question, because there's always that underlying agent of trying to cut sports. Back in the day, you'd have Rutgers, we had 31, 32 sports. You had Ohio State, had 30 some sports. Well, obviously, it's very difficult to fund all those sports. Now, with the COVID testing, the putting students up in dorms and meals, and the costs are they're rampant. And I'm fearful that the Olympic sports, the non-revenue sports in a lot of these different places will get cut. Could be wrestling, could be baseball, could be swimming, could be fencing, could be golf, men and women's golf. I mean, a lot of these sports could be in serious trouble as we go through this. And that's why I'm really hoping that we can get some answers to the COVID, because the more we go down this road, we get in a deeper and deeper hole, and it gives these administrations an opportunity to say, "Hey, we can't do it. We can't cut it, so we got to cut it." And a lot of the feedback that you might get ordinarily if there wasn't COVID from the former athletes in that sport that rile up, you won't get it because they'll realize you can't do it. So I'm very, very concerned about the number of individuals, particularly women, that will be denied that chance to play.
Yeah, but one thing you taught me, Coach, was, we could probably figure this out. And that women's basketball, I think particularly, is well suited to be a revenue sport in terms of selling it, marketing it, sponsoring it, and getting it out there, where it's not necessarily, to me, it's a sport that's got immense potential for an audience and to make money.
I think I agree with you, Mike, but I was so lucky because I had you. And you had that look about you like, okay, lady, what are we going to do here? And I had these crazy ideas, but you were a go-getter. And the next thing you know, you're over at Kraft selling 10,000 tickets to these people over here. We put together coloring books. We had 4th and 5th and 6th grade teachers doing geography classes of where our schedule was. We were doing tickets to grade schools, the kids who had good report cards and things. I mean, we did all those kinds of things. Now, as a head coach, I could never in 1,000 years done that by myself. But having you and your graduate class work with me and put that together, we did that. But again, when you sell that and you look at people, they look at you like you have 3 heads. I mean, people did look at us like we had 3 heads until they saw the people come through the door, until they saw that, they were wrapped around the assembly hall 3 deep. And then it was like, wow. And you won a Big Ten championship, and you had the championship. And then you had these quality players that people, they wanted their kids to talk to. They wanted their kids to be like Nicole Vasey or Ashley Bergen or Krista Ranking or, whoever it was. And that made a tremendous, tremendous difference.
But don't you think that could be done other places?
Sure it could. Absolutely. There's no question it could, but you have to have people who want to do it.
And you're not seeing that?
I think it's easier just to say, we can't do it. This isn't going to work. It's too much work.
And so we want to live in a model where we have men's basketball and football as kind of the revenue producing sports. Right. Everybody else just kind of hangs out, just.
Yeah. Some schools, I know the volleyball team is still very, very good at Illinois. And they were in the Final Four just two years ago.
Years ago. Yeah.
And but you have some great teams in the Big Ten that are like that. So they've changed their facilities. I know Penn State has done. We used to play basketball in that hall. They've changed that to a volleyball arena. So you have that, and people want to see that. And the volleyball is one where the student body really gets after it and goes and watches them play. So again, you have to be able to have your players relate to your audience.
Okay. Well, T, I think we're at that point. I want to say it again, how much I appreciate you. You changed my life, and I appreciate you being here tonight. That's great. I always enjoy the conversation, and I'm just so impressed with what you had to say and what you've done. And it's been a valuable part of my experience. Thank you.
Mike, my pleasure. I hope I didn't bore your class too much tonight, having the old broad in. But anyway, it was fun. I wish you all the best to the students and things. This is your time. I would definitely communicate with people that you're interested in. Send them a note. They might not hear from them, and you just might hear back from them. And that might make a difference in what happens to you later on down the road, because I can't tell you how many times that happened. So go Fighting Illini, be well, and thank you for the invitation.
Godspeed. Thank you.
Okay.
Please. Okay, go on, Joe. Are we off?
No, we're not off. We're still alive now.
Okay.
Yeah. I think the student, they are